The galaxy had long known about humans, though few really understood them. Some saw them as weak and unpredictable, a species that relied more on instinct and emotion than careful planning. Others feared them, not because they were physically powerful or technologically unmatched, but because humans were clever, adaptable, and utterly relentless when challenged. Stories about human bravery had spread quietly across distant star systems. Tales of explorers surviving impossible odds, of small crews turning the tide of battles that seemed hopeless, and of ordinary humans standing up against entire fleets. Most species had learned over centuries that humans were a puzzle dangerous not for what they showed, but for what they were capable of when pushed. And in every corner of the galaxy, there was a clear, unspoken rule: never underestimate a human ship. Captain Raylan Ward, a seasoned human with years of experience navigating deep space, was assigned to command the Resolute, a mid-sized human exploration vessel. Raylan had earned a reputation for calm decision-making in high-pressure situations. He wasn't the type to seek conflict, but he was no stranger to danger either. He had faced mechanical failures, hostile space weather, and unfriendly encounters before, and every experience had taught him something vital about survival, leadership, and the unpredictability of both humans and the galaxy at large. Under his command, the Resolute was not just a ship. It was a well-oiled team of dedicated crew members who trusted their captain's judgment completely. Each person on board understood their role, and each knew the other's strengths and weaknesses, making the ship more than the sum of its parts. Together, they were ready to face the unknown, confident but cautious, aware of both the wonders and dangers that lay ahead. The mission itself seemed simple, almost routine. Humanity had long moved beyond the borders of their home system, exploring star lanes and mapping planets, nebulae, and uncharted territories. They sought knowledge, scientific discovery, and peaceful contact with alien civilizations. The Resolute was tasked with surveying a neutral zone, a stretch of space that few civilizations had dared to traverse. It was an area known for anomalies in space-time, unstable energy fields, and the occasional reports of strange, aggressive species. Despite these risks, the mission was crucial. It was about establishing humanity's presence, learning more about the galaxy, and proving that humans could explore with curiosity and intelligence rather than violence. Raylan and his crew had trained for months, running simulations, studying alien cultures, and learning to anticipate every possible hazard. They knew the galaxy watched them, and while most species maintained distance out of respect or fear, any misstep could bring consequences beyond imagination. On the day the Resolute departed, the ship hummed with quiet energy, its systems operating at peak efficiency. Raylan walked along the corridors, checking in with crew members, exchanging brief words, and offering calm reassurances. There was no anxiety in his demeanor, but his eyes, always alert, scanned everything, noting even minor irregularities. The crew trusted him completely, knowing that any hesitation could cost them dearly in deep space. Pilots prepared for takeoff, engineers ran final diagnostics on the engines and life support systems, and communications officers made last-minute contact checks. The tension was low, yet beneath it ran a steady current of anticipation, the kind that comes before a journey into the unknown. For the crew, this was not just a mission, it was an adventure, a test of their skills, and an opportunity to make their mark in the galaxy. As the Resolute moved away from human space and into the neutral zone, the stars seemed to stretch infinitely in every direction. The hum of the ship's engines and the quiet chatter of the crew filled the corridors, but there was a sense of calm vigilance, an understanding that this region was unclaimed and that the balance of power in the galaxy could shift in an instant. Humans were aware of the stories of ambushes, of ships disappearing without a trace, of encounters that had ended tragically for other species. Those stories lingered in the back of every crew member's mind, serving as a reminder that even humans, with all their ingenuity, were not invincible. Yet, humans were different. They did not panic in the face of fear. They adapted, they strategized, and they faced danger head-on, often turning peril into advantage. This resilience, this stubborn determination to survive and thrive, was what made humans both feared and respected across the stars. The crew had also studied the history of alien interactions, learning how most species approached humans with caution. Humans had earned a reputation not for seeking conflict, but for responding with precision and force when provoked. The galaxy had observed countless skirmishes and standoffs where humans refused to back down. Even when outnumbered, they had an uncanny ability to analyze situations, improvise tactics, and strike back with unexpected effectiveness. Other species often underestimated them, assuming that humans relied solely on luck or emotion. What they did not realize was that humans combined creativity, intuition, and calculation in ways that made them unpredictable opponents. It was this unpredictability, more than any weapon or fleet, that made ambushing a human ship a terrifying proposition. Over time, a quiet consensus had formed. Attacking a human without provocation was not only dangerous, it was foolish. And yet, there were always those who believed they could outsmart humanity, who thought fear and intimidation would succeed where others had failed. As the Resolute continued its journey, Raylan held briefings with his officers, emphasizing caution but encouraging curiosity. The mission was about exploration, discovery, and building bridges, not conflict. Yet, he reminded them that the galaxy was not always logical or fair. Threats could appear without warning, and survival depended on preparation, teamwork, and a willingness to act decisively. The crew listened intently, absorbing every detail, aware that their lives and the success of the mission depended on trust, skill, and focus. In many ways, this mission represented the essence of humanity itself: the desire to seek knowledge, the courage to face the unknown, and the determination to survive no matter the odds. The neutral zone ahead was both a challenge and an opportunity, a test of humanity's resilience and of the crew's ability to navigate a universe that was as beautiful as it was dangerous. Raylan's mind often drifted to the bigger picture. Beyond the immediate mission, there was the unspoken responsibility humanity carried. Humans were still relatively young in galactic terms, and their presence was a reminder that life could thrive in unexpected ways. Each new star system they explored, each new species they encountered, had the potential to change the course of history. Humans were explorers, diplomats, scientists, and warriors when needed, all wrapped into one species that refused to be defined by fear or weakness. The Resolute was more than a ship, it was a symbol of that human spirit. Every calculation, every maneuver, every decision was a reflection of centuries of survival, adaptation, and ingenuity. The galaxy watched, even if silently, as humans took their first steps into a region where few dared to tread in the corridors of the Resolute. The crew carried out their routines with efficiency and focus. Engineers monitored energy levels, making subtle adjustments to maintain optimal performance. Pilots checked navigational paths, scanning for anomalies or potential threats. Scientists reviewed data from sensors, analyzing stellar formations and searching for patterns that could reveal new worlds or hidden dangers. Communication officers maintained a constant link with human space, ready to transmit updates or call for assistance if necessary. Each crew member understood that their actions were interconnected, that the safety of the ship and the success of the mission relied on their combined efforts. This awareness created a sense of unity, a quiet but powerful bond that made the Resolute not just a vessel, but a living, breathing team capable of facing whatever the galaxy could throw at them. That as the Resolute glided deeper into the neutral zone, the stars stretched like endless points of light, and the vastness of space became both awe-inspiring and intimidating. The crew felt the thrill of discovery, tempered by the knowledge that danger could appear at any moment. Raylan walked the corridors, speaking briefly with crew members, offering reassurance, and quietly observing the behavior of his team. He noticed the subtle signs of tension and Gina's tightened jaw, a pilot's focused stare, but also the excitement, the pride in being part of something larger than themselves. For humans, exploration was more than a duty. It was a passion, a calling, and a test of courage. Every challenge faced in this uncharted territory was an opportunity to learn, to adapt, and to prove that humans could survive where others might falter. Though the mission was officially peaceful, the undercurrent of vigilance was ever present. Raylan reminded himself that the galaxy was full of species with agendas that humans might not fully understand. Some would be allies, some indifferent, and others potentially hostile. The crew trained to recognize patterns, anticipate behavior, and respond effectively to threats. They practiced emergency drills, prepared contingency plans, and maintained a calm readiness that balanced anticipation with patience. In this way, the Resolute moved forward, steady and confident, a small but formidable presence in a vast and unpredictable universe. Humans had always survived because they were adaptable, intelligent, and brave. The neutral zone would be no exception. And so, the journey of the Resolute began not with grand fanfare or battle cries, but with quiet determination, focus, and the human desire to explore. Raylan and his crew represented everything the galaxy knew and feared about humanity: intelligence, courage, unpredictability, and a capacity to face the unknown without hesitation. They were not seeking conflict, but they were prepared for it. They were not reckless, but they were unafraid. And as they ventured into the uncharted depths of space, the galaxy watched quietly, knowing that one day, the human spirit would prove itself in ways that no one could have fully predicted. The calm and excitement aboard the Resolute persisted as the ship continued deeper into the neutral zone, but the galaxy was never truly quiet. Unknown to Captain Raylan Ward and his crew, a faction far across the stars had been watching humans for some time. This group, known as the Shathreen Dominion, was secretive, cunning, and proud of its reputation for military precision. They saw humans not as partners in exploration, but as unpredictable threats that needed to be taught a lesson. Unlike other species that feared humans but avoided confrontation, the Shathreen were determined to test humanity directly. They believed that if humans could be intimidated or destroyed in a single decisive action, the galaxy would finally recognize the limits of human capability. In their view, a carefully planned ambush would prove that humans were nothing more than a reckless species. Overconfident and out of their depth, the Shathreen Dominion operated from a cluster of heavily fortified star systems, hidden behind dense nebulae and asteroids that served as natural shields. They had observed humanity's expansion with suspicion, noting the unusual adaptability, tenacity, and occasional audacity of human explorers. Shathrine historians recounted battles where humans had survived overwhelming odds, turning desperate situations into victories. Each account, passed down among their leaders, was seen as proof that humans were not only fearless but perhaps dangerously clever. For the Shathrine, this unpredictability was intolerable. A species that could not be fully anticipated threatened their idea of control over their region of the galaxy. They decided that direct action was necessary, not diplomacy, not negotiation, but a swift and decisive strike. They began to plan the ambush with meticulous care, analyzing human tactics, studying the Resolute, and positioning their fleet in a hidden corridor where escape would be nearly impossible. Back aboard the Resolute, Raylan Ward and his crew remained unaware of the shadow looming over them. They focused on their mission, scanning the stars, cataloging anomalies, and recording data from sensors that detected everything from tiny space debris to distant energy fluctuations. The crew was alert and well-trained, always ready for unexpected hazards, but nothing in their training could fully prepare them for the kind of cunning the Shathrine had devised. Pilots and navigators worked together to plot the safest course through unstable regions of space, while engineers ran constant diagnostics to ensure that every system could respond to emergencies. Scientists aboard the ship marveled at the strange formations of the nebulae and the subtle variations in gravitational fields, unaware that their careful studies were taking place under the watchful eyes of those who wished them harm. The calm routine of exploration carried on, a testament to humanity's discipline and focus. Even as danger silently approached, as the Resolute moved further into the neutral zone, subtle signs of danger began to appear. Sensors occasionally picked up minor anomaly shifts in energy readings that could be dismissed as natural phenomena. Raylan, experienced as he was, noted these oddities but encouraged the crew to continue their observations. He trusted the capabilities of the ship and the vigilance of his team, understanding that overreacting to every anomaly could create unnecessary panic, while ignoring them entirely could be disastrous. The Shathrine fleet, using advanced stealth technology, moved closer with deliberate precision, cloaked from sensors and visual detection. They were confident that their ambush would strike quickly, leaving humans with little chance to respond. To the Shathrine it seemed like a perfect plan, a sudden, overwhelming attack that would demonstrate their superiority and remove the human presence from the neutral zone. The Shathrine believed that fear alone could control humans. They had studied human psychology in some detail and assumed that overwhelming force, sudden strikes, and displays of power would intimidate them into submission. Yet they underestimated a critical trait of humanity. Humans did not respond to fear in predictable ways. While many species might surrender or flee, humans often analyzed threats under pressure, seeking opportunities to turn disadvantage into advantage. They thrived in chaos, relying on teamwork, ingenuity, and improvisation to survive. The Shathrine, confident in their calculations and numbers, had not accounted for this uniquely human resilience. They believed in precision, control, and order, but humans thrived when order broke down, when improvisation became necessary. The approaching ambush was about to challenge their assumptions in ways they could not predict. Moments before the attack, Raylan began to notice subtle irregularities. Communication frequencies were quieter than expected. A faint, unexplained energy ripple passed through their senses. Even the patterns of nearby stellar radiation seemed unusual. His instincts told him that something was off. He called briefings with his senior officers, discussing potential causes and emphasizing readiness without revealing panic. Engineers double-checked shield calibrations and weapon systems, while pilots prepared evasive maneuvers. The crew was calm but alert, each member performing their tasks with precision. Unbeknownst to them, the Shathrine fleet was positioning itself perfectly, ready to strike with speed and overwhelming firepower. It was the kind of ambush that could annihilate a crew before they even had time to react. The kind of attack that was supposed to prove humans vulnerable, foolish, and weak. Suddenly, the ambush began. Shathrine ships decloaked in a coordinated strike, surrounding the Resolute from multiple angles. Energy blasts erupted from every direction, tearing through space with deadly precision. Alarms blared throughout the human vessel as systems registered hits. Shields flared to absorb impact, and crew members were thrown into action. The attack was fast, violent, and terrifying, designed to create chaos and force submission. Every species that had attempted such a maneuver had succeeded, but this time, humans were on the receiving end. The initial shock was immense. The Resolute shook under the impact, and crew members struggled to maintain their balance as they followed emergency protocols. The galaxy, watching silently through distant sensors and observation posts, recognized the audacity of the attack. Ambushing a human ship was a gamble that most species had long avoided, and now, that gamble had begun. Despite the initial shock, Raylan Ward did not panic. Years of training, experience, and instinct guided his every decision. He issued calm, precise orders, directing engineers to reroute power to failing systems, instructing pilots on evasive maneuvers, and coordinating the crew's response to maintain operational effectiveness. The Resolute, though hit hard, remained functional. Its shields held, its weapon systems were still responsive, and the crew's coordination began to counter the initial advantage of the ship. Even under fire, human ingenuity shone through. Improvised strategies, quick thinking, and teamwork allowed the Resolute to avoid catastrophic damage. Where other species might have faltered, the humans adapted instantly, turning the chaos of the ambush into a controlled response that preserved their chances of survival. It was the first sign that the Shathrine's assumptions about humanity were dangerously flawed. The attack also revealed a psychological aspect of humans that the Shathrine had not accounted for. Resolve under pressure. Humans, unlike many species, did not simply react to fear with flight or panic. They analyzed, adapted, and sought opportunities even in the most hopeless scenarios. Every crew member on the Resolute understood their role, trusted their colleagues, and acted with both discipline and creativity. Where the Shathrine expected hesitation, they found precision. Where they expected panic, they found calm determination. The Resolute's crew became a single, cohesive unit, each member anticipating the next step of both ally and enemy. Their combined actions made the human ship more formidable than the sum of its parts. The galaxy, observing remotely, could see why humans were both feared and respected, not because of brute strength, but because of an unbreakable spirit and extraordinary adaptability that as the initial chaos of the ambush unfolded. The Resolute began to mount a counter-response. Weapon systems targeted the Shathrine ships with rapid accuracy, defensive maneuvers minimized further damage, and communication teams relayed vital information across the ship to optimize their tactics. Every crew member contributed, their actions guided by training, instinct, and a shared determination to survive. The Shathrine, confident in their overwhelming numbers and careful planning, were surprised by the speed and effectiveness of the human response. The ambush, meant to demonstrate superiority, was beginning to falter. Humans were not only defending themselves, they were fighting back strategically, exploiting weaknesses and adapting to the unexpected. The Shathrine were encountering the very unpredictability they had feared, discovering firsthand why the galaxy treated human vessels with caution, even in the midst of battle. Raylan maintained a balance of focus and adaptability. He monitored the ship's condition, adjusted strategies as new threats appeared, and inspired his crew through calm authority. Every decision mattered, and the cumulative effect of their actions began to shift the momentum of the encounter. The Shathrine's confidence wavered as they realized that the humans were not simply reacting, they were controlling the engagement in ways that defied expectation. The Resolute, a single human ship, was proving that preparation, courage, and ingenuity could counter even a numerically superior enemy. The initial intent of the ambush to intimidate and destroy was failing, and the humans were beginning to demonstrate exactly why the galaxy had long feared the consequences of provoking them. The first moments of conflict established a pattern. Humans adapted, learned, and responded with creativity. The Shathrine Dominion's plan, meticulously designed and seemingly foolproof, faced the reality that human unpredictability was not a weakness, it was a strength. Every misstep they anticipated from the humans was met with innovation. Every pressure point they tried to exploit was neutralized, and every attempt to instill fear only hardened the humans' resolve. The battle was no longer a simple ambush. It was a test of strategy, adaptability, and the enduring human spirit. The Resolute's crew, though facing overwhelming odds, was demonstrating the first glimpses of why attacking a human ship was considered one of the most dangerous choices in the galaxy, and so the stage was set for the confrontation to escalate. The Shathrine, confident in their superiority, had underestimated the essence of humanity. The Resolute, though caught in a carefully laid ambush, remained operational and responsive. The crew's calm under fire, strategic thinking, and ability to work as a unit hinted at the turning points that were yet to come. This was no ordinary battle. This was humanity being tested, and the galaxy would soon witness why humans were never to be underestimated. The initial shock of the attack had passed, replaced by a tense determination. Humans were fighting back not recklessly, but with intelligence, precision, and courage. And in that moment, the first lesson of the ambush became clear. Underestimating humans was the first mistake any species could make, and the consequences of such a mistake were only beginning to unfold. The ambush had started with sudden violence, and for a moment, it seemed as if the Resolute and her crew were fighting a losing battle. The Shathrine Dominion's attack had been precise, coordinated, and overwhelming in its first moments. Energy blasts streaked across space, slamming into shields and hull, sending tremors through the ship. Alarms screamed in the corridors, flashing red lights illuminating the determined faces of crew members as they scrambled to their stations. The initial shock left some breathless, but only for a moment. In that instant, Raylan Ward, the captain, realized something fundamental about humans. They did not succumb to panic, they adapted. What looked like chaos to outsiders was actually an opportunity for the crew to demonstrate resilience, intelligence, and coordination. Every crew member knew that hesitation could be fatal, so every action became deliberate, fast, and calculated. They were not just responding, they were strategizing in real time, and that was something the Shathrine had not anticipated. The first thing Raylan did was assess the damage. Sensors indicated that some shield sections were under heavy strain, while other systems were beginning to falter. He directed engineers to reroute energy, prioritizing shields and weapons to maintain defensive and offensive capabilities simultaneously. Engineers moved quickly, recalibrating circuits, manually reinforcing shields, and improvising solutions when systems failed. The Resolute's crew had trained for emergencies, but what they were facing now went beyond simulations. They were applying skills under real fire. Pilots executed evasive maneuvers with precision, weaving through debris and energy blasts. Their movements were unpredictable yet synchronized, making it difficult for the Shathreen to land consistent hits. Every crew member played their part, aware that survival depended on coordination, quick thinking, and adaptability. In this moment, the human spirit of resilience and ingenuity was on full display, and the Shathreen were beginning to recognize that they had underestimated their opponent. Even as the attack intensified, Raylan maintained a sense of calm authority. His voice, steady and commanding over intercom, guided the crew through the chaos. He delegated tasks efficiently. Engineers focused on keeping critical systems online. Gunners targeted key points in the enemy formation, and pilots adjusted maneuvers to minimize exposure. Each order was precise, leaving no room for confusion. The crew's trust in him was absolute, and their actions reflected that confidence. Humans, as a species, had developed a unique ability to make fast, intelligent decisions under extreme stress, and the Resolute's crew was a perfect example. While the Shathreen had assumed fear would dictate the humans' reactions, they had not accounted for this capacity to transform crisis into strategy. The first signs of a shift in momentum were already emerging. That at the same time, the Shathreen fleet began to show signs of frustration. Their calculations had predicted an easy victory, but humans responded in ways they could not anticipate. Every pattern the attackers tried to exploit was countered by quick adaptation. When a Shathreen ship attempted to flank the Resolute, a clever combination of evasive maneuvers and precise counterfire neutralized the threat. When another group tried to overwhelm the shields from multiple angles, engineers quickly redistributed power, absorbing energy from less critical systems to reinforce defensive grids. The Shathreen had believed they could dominate with superior numbers and coordination, but humans had demonstrated that adaptability, creativity, and teamwork could level the playing field. Their initial confidence began to the road as the reality of the human response became undeniable. One of the most remarkable aspects of this moment was the crew's ability to communicate and process information instantly. Sensors fed streams of data into command consoles, highlighting enemy positions, weak points, and structural vulnerabilities. Analysts interpreted this data in real time, providing Raylan and his officers with actionable insights. Decisions that would take other species minutes or longer were executed in seconds by the human crew. Gunners adjusted targeting on the fly, engineers recalibrated shields dynamically, and pilots performed maneuvers that combined instinct with precise calculation. The Resolute had transformed from a passive target into a reactive, highly efficient combatant. What started as an ambush had evolved into a tense, high-stakes duel, and it was becoming increasingly clear that humans could not be easily overpowered or intimidated. The psychological aspect of the battle was equally significant. Humans were fueled by more than just survival instinct. They were motivated by determination, loyalty to one another, and a refusal to be dominated. Each crew member understood that failure was not an option. They had responsibilities to one another, to the mission, and to humanity itself. Fear existed, yes, but it did not control them. Instead, it sharpened focus, intensified resolve, and inspired innovative thinking. The Shathreen, relying on their belief that fear would cause humans to falter, encountered an unexpected obstacle. The very thing they thought would weaken humans, the stress of sudden attack, actually made the crew more formidable. In those tense moments, human resilience shone brightest, and the galaxy's warnings about underestimating humans began to prove true. Raylan made a critical decision that would define the turning point of the encounter. He ordered a coordinated counterattack aimed not just at survival, but at destabilizing the Shathreen formation. The move was risky. It required precise timing, flawless execution, and trust in every member of the crew. Pilots had to maneuver through the gaps between enemy ships without exposing themselves to fatal fire. Gunners needed to hit key structural points, and engineers had to maintain energy levels under extreme strain. One mistake could have destroyed the Resolute, but Raylan's experience, combined with the crew's training and confidence, turned risk into opportunity. The ship shifted from defense to controlled offense, testing the limits of both human skill and Shathreen assumptions. As the Resolute executed the counterattack, the Shathreen fleet began to experience disarray. Their precise formation, which had been the foundation of the ambush, broke down under the humans' unpredictable maneuvers. Ships that had once moved in perfect synchronization were forced to adjust rapidly to counter human actions, creating gaps in their lines. Energy weapons that had been aimed with certainty now missed targets as the humans' unpredictable movements and rapid counterfire challenged their accuracy. The Shathreen, who had relied on overwhelming numbers and methodical tactics, were encountering a level of chaos they could not control. In the midst of this, the human crew maintained their cohesion, demonstrating a combination of adaptability, focus, and creativity that even the Shatharine had not anticipated. Amid the chaos, the Resolute began to exploit weaknesses in the enemy fleet. Sensors detected minor structural vulnerabilities in several Shatharine vessels, and gunners, guided by quick analytical calculations, targeted these points with devastating effect. One by one, enemy ships were forced to retreat or sustain damage that impaired their offensive capabilities. Engineers on the Resolute adjusted energy distribution to allow weapons to fire at optimal efficiency while keeping critical shields operational. Pilots executed daring maneuvers, moving the ship in ways that seemed impossible, dodging fire and positioning the vessel for maximum advantage. The Shatharine, confident in their initial superiority, began to realize that their assumptions about humans had been dangerously flawed. Each action by the Resolute and its crew highlighted a central truth. Humans were not easily predictable, and their ingenuity under pressure was a force in itself. The turning point became most evident when the crew of the Resolute began to seize control of the battlefield. The initial momentum of the Shatharine ambush had been neutralized, replaced by a tense balance of strategy and counter-strategy. Humans were no longer reacting purely to the attack, they were dictating the flow of the encounter. Raylan's orders combined calculated risk with ingenuity, guiding his crew through complex maneuvers that kept the ship alive while applying pressure to the enemy. Each officer, engineer, and pilot acted with clarity and precision, trusting in one another and in their training. The Shatharine, despite superior numbers, found themselves responding to the humans rather than executing their original plan. The dynamics of the battle had shifted, proving that unpredictability, creativity, and resilience could outweigh brute force. Throughout this period, the crew's morale and focus remained exceptional. Even under relentless fire, there was no panic, no hesitation. Every member knew that their actions mattered, that survival depended not just on individual skill, but on collective coordination. The Resolute's crew had transformed the ambush into a controlled engagement, turning what had seemed like inevitable disaster into a display of strategic brilliance. Humans were proving once again why the galaxy had long feared provoking them. The Shatharine Dominion had assumed that fear and intimidation would dictate human behavior, but instead it had produced a calculated, courageous, and remarkably effective response. In this moment, the crew had reached the turning point of the battle, the moment when survival became possibility, and possibility became the first step toward victory. Even as the Resolute executed its maneuvers, distant observers in the galaxy began to take notice. For civilizations that had underestimated humanity, it became clear that human ships could survive situations that would destroy almost any other species. For those who had feared humans, this was a demonstration of why that fear was justified. Humans combined intelligence, instinct, creativity, and courage in ways that defied easy prediction. The ambush, intended to demonstrate human weakness, had instead showcased the very qualities that made humans formidable: their ability to adapt, to innovate, and to maintain focus under extreme pressure. The turning point had been reached not through raw power, but through ingenuity, coordination, and the unbreakable human spirit. From the moment the Resolute began to counterattack, the battle became less about defense and more about opportunity. The crew identified vulnerabilities, adjusted strategies on the fly, and capitalized on the confusion within the enemy ranks. The Shatharine, confident in their superior numbers and meticulous planning, were gradually losing control. The humans were no longer mere targets. They were active participants shaping the flow of engagement. Each successful maneuver, each well-timed counterstrike, reinforced the idea that humans could not be intimidated, that under pressure they were not just survivors, they were innovators, leaders, and warriors. The turning point had arrived, setting the stage for the climax that would determine the outcome of this encounter and leave a lasting impression across the galaxy. The battle had reached its most intense moment. The Resolute had survived the initial ambush and was no longer just defending itself, it had begun to dictate the flow of the fight. But the Shatharine Dominion was relentless. Their fleet, though shaken, continued to press the attack, firing volleys of energy and maneuvering with a deadly combination of coordination and aggression. From the outside, the battle might have seemed chaotic, with streams of light crisscrossing the void, ships twisting and spinning as they dodged fire, and alarms ringing in a continuous ear-splitting chorus. Yet, aboard the Resolute, every movement, every action, and every decision was deliberate. The crew had adapted to the chaos, transforming fear and uncertainty into controlled precision. It was at this point, in the heat of near-impossible circumstances, that humanity's true strength revealed itself. Not just survival, but brilliant, daring strategy that could turn the tide of war. Captain Raylan Ward understood that this was the moment that would define everything. The Shatharine were skilled, numerous, and dangerous, but they had underestimated humans' willingness to take calculated risks. The first step was to exploit the enemy's overconfidence. Raylan issued orders to pilots to maneuver in ways that appeared reckless, drawing Shatharine ships into positions that exposed their weaker points. Gunners were instructed to focus on critical systems, not just hulls. creating cascading failures that would destabilize entire enemy formations. Engineers worked furiously to reroute power, ensuring that shields remained strong while weapons fired at peak efficiency. Every officer on the Resolute knew their role and executed it flawlessly, each decision amplifying the others. Humans were no longer just defending themselves, they were transforming the battlefield into something unpredictable, something the Shathreen could not fully anticipate or control. The Shathreen, confident in their numerical superiority and the thorough planning of the ambush, were beginning to falter. Their ships, designed for precise and coordinated attacks, struggled to adjust to the humans' unconventional tactics. When the Resolute suddenly changed trajectory or targeted unexpected weak points, the Shathreen had to react instantly, often making mistakes under pressure. One vessel veered off course and collided with debris, another suffered internal system failures due to concentrated fire, and a third found itself trapped in a gravitational anomaly caused by the humans' clever maneuvers. The Shathreen Dominion, whose leaders prided themselves on order and discipline, was now facing a level of chaos that was not only dangerous but unfamiliar. They realized, perhaps too late, that attacking a human ship was far more complex and perilous than any strategic plan could have anticipated. As the battle escalated, Raylan decided to take a bold, high-risk maneuver, one that no other captain would attempt. He ordered the Resolute to use the gravitational pull of a nearby collapsing nebula to slingshot the ship at incredible speed through the enemy fleet. The move was dangerous. Miscalculating the trajectory could destroy the Resolute instantly, and any misalignment could expose the ship to concentrated fire. But humans thrived on calculated risk, and the crew trusted Raylan implicitly. Pilots adjusted thrusters with millimeter precision. Engineers optimized power to engines and shields, and gunners prepared to strike targets at exact moments. In a display of coordination and courage, the Resolute rocketed through the battlefield, weaving between enemy ships, avoiding collisions, and striking critical points with surgical precision. The Shathreen fleet, though large and powerful, could not react quickly enough. Panic spread among their ranks, and their formation began to fracture under the pressure. The effect of this maneuver was immediate and devastating. Several Shathreen vessels were destroyed or disabled as the Resolute struck weak points and maneuvered unpredictably. Energy weapons that had been aimed at the human ship now found their targets dodging and countering with unprecedented speed. Systems within the Shathreen ships overheated, shields failed, and coordination broke down. What had begun as a carefully orchestrated ambush became a disorganized scramble for survival. The humans, who had been presumed vulnerable and predictable, were instead demonstrating ingenuity, bravery, and a capacity to think several steps ahead. It was the kind of performance that even seasoned observers across the galaxy could not ignore. Humans were showing, in real, why they were feared. They combined creativity, courage, and precision in ways that defied conventional expectation. Even as the Resolute executed its daring slingshot, the crew worked as a seamless unit. Pilots, engineers, gunners, and analysts communicated constantly, adapting to new threats and opportunities in seconds. Engineers rerouted power to weapons that would strike where shields were weakest. Pilots predicted enemy movements, and gunners focused on ships that could create the most strategic advantage if disabled. Every action was calculated, but the speed and adaptability made it appear almost instinctive. The Shathreen Dominion, which had relied on methodical planning and the predictability of human reactions, was now experiencing the opposite: unpredictability combined with deadly effectiveness. Their fleet, though formidable, was being systematically dismantled by a single human ship and its exceptional crew. The psychological impact on the Shathreen was profound. Their leaders, confident in the superiority of their numbers and strategy, were witnessing the failure of their assumptions. Humans, who they had assumed would panic and falter under pressure, were instead exhibiting extraordinary composure and tactical brilliance. The fear and caution that had caused other species to respect humans suddenly felt dangerously real. One by one, Shathreen captains began to retreat or maneuver defensively, trying to regroup, but the damage had already been done. The Resolute, using speed, precision, and unpredictability, had transformed from a vulnerable target into a dominant force in the engagement. The galaxy's warnings about humans, long whispered and sometimes dismissed, were being validated spectacularly in real time. As the battle raged on, distant allies of humanity began to respond. Some species that had once doubted humans, or remained neutral, were compelled to intervene after receiving distress signals. These allies, though not numerous, arrived strategically, adding force to the humans' position and further tipping the scales. Their arrival, coordinated with the Resolute's maneuvers, created confusion and disarray within the Shathreen ranks. The humans were not just surviving, they were orchestrating the battlefield, leveraging the chaos to their advantage while simultaneously strengthening their position through unexpected alliances. The Shathreen, whose original plan had relied on surprise and control, were now facing a multi-layered challenge that threatened the tactical integrity of their fleet. Raylan's leadership was central to this moment. Calm under pressure, decisive in action, and always aware of both immediate and long-term consequences. He guided the crew through the most dangerous moments. He balanced aggression with caution, risk with calculation, and improvisation with experience. His decisions ensured that the Resolute could survive extreme danger while maximizing its impact on the enemy fleet. The human crew's trust in his judgment allowed them to execute high-risk strategies with confidence, creating a synergy that made them far more effective than the sum of their parts. It was not luck that saved them, it was human skill, coordination, and courage under fire. The climax of the battle occurred as the Resolute and its allies executed a final, coordinated assault on the Shatharine fleet. Using every system at their disposal, the humans targeted critical points in the enemy formation. Pilots executed daring maneuvers, gunners fired at precision weak points, and engineers kept the ship at peak operational capacity despite the ongoing strain. The Shatharine fleet, fractured and demoralized, could not respond effectively. One by one, enemy ships were disabled, destroyed, or forced to retreat. The ambush that had begun with overwhelming force ended in complete reversal. The humans had not only survived, but had emerged as the dominant presence in the engagement. The galaxy watched, in awe and disbelief, as the Resolute demonstrated the combination of skill, ingenuity, and courage that made humans legendary. Even after the immediate danger passed, the impact of the climax remained. The Shatharine Dominion, humiliated and weakened, had no choice but to retreat and reconsider its approach to humanity. The Resolute's crew, exhausted but unbroken, had proven that even against overwhelming odds, humans could not only survive, they could thrive. This moment would be remembered across the galaxy as the defining example of why ambushing a human ship was considered one of the most dangerous actions a species could take. The climax of the battle had transformed fear into respect, chaos into strategy, and near destruction into triumph. Humanity, in that moment, had shown its most feared and admired qualities: resilience, ingenuity, courage, and the refusal to back down when faced with overwhelming odds. The victory was not just tactical, it was symbolic. It demonstrated that humans were not to be underestimated, that their ability to adapt, innovate, and execute under extreme pressure made them a force unlike any other in the galaxy. It showed that strategy, courage, and unity could overcome even the most carefully laid plans of a powerful and confident enemy. For the crew of the Resolute, it was a confirmation of their training, trust, and determination. For the galaxy, it was a stark reminder that humans were a species that should never be taken lightly. The climax of the battle had not only saved the ship and its crew, it had reshaped the perception of humanity throughout the stars. The battle was over. The Resolute had survived the ambush and emerged victorious against the Shatharine Dominion, a force that had believed they could destroy humanity with ease. The aftermath of the confrontation was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Ships that had once been aggressive, confident, and coordinated now lay disabled or in retreat. The Shatharine fleet had been shattered, not entirely destroyed, but broken in spirit, strategy, and confidence. Their leaders were forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humans. Across distant star systems, species that had observed or heard reports of the battle began to understand a simple truth: humans were unpredictable, resilient, and immensely dangerous when provoked. The warnings whispered through galactic corridors for centuries suddenly made perfect sense. Never ambushed a human ship was not just advice, it was a rule born from experience. And the galaxy had just witnessed why. Captain Raylan Ward, though exhausted, remained vigilant. He walked through the corridors of the Resolute, observing his crew as they repaired systems, monitored communications, and assessed damage. There were no celebrations yet, no cheers or songs. The crew had survived, yes, but survival did not mean the danger was fully over. In deep space, even after victory, there was always the need for caution. Engineers recalibrated shields, replacing damaged circuits and reinforcing critical systems. Pilots ran checks on propulsion and navigation to ensure the ship could respond to unexpected hazards. Analysts reviewed sensor data to determine the exact positions and statuses of the retreating Shatharine vessels. Every action was purposeful. The crew understood that triumph was measured not just by victory, but by the ability to remain prepared, alert, and functional after chaos. It was this combination of skill, discipline, and resilience that had allowed them to reach this moment, and it would continue to define their survival. Raylan gathered his senior officers for a briefing. His tone was calm but firm, emphasizing both pride and caution. They had won the battle, but the implications extended far beyond the neutral zone. The Shatharine Dominion would regroup, and other species would have observed humanity's response. Diplomacy, negotiation, and strategy would become more complex in the aftermath. That humans had shown that they could survive and even dominate against overwhelming odds. But with that display came new responsibilities. The galaxy now knew that humans could fight with ingenuity, courage, and adaptability unmatched by most civilizations. This awareness would influence every interaction in the future. Some would seek alliances. Others might hesitate to confront humans directly, and a few might still foolishly attempt conflict. The balance of power had shifted, and humans were now more than observers. They were influential participants in the unfolding story of the galaxy. The crew worked tirelessly to repair the ship and restore operational capabilities. Damaged weapon systems were recalibrated, shield emitters reinforced, and engines optimized for maximum performance. Scientists aboard the Resolute studied the energy signatures and debris from the Shathrine fleet, gaining insight into their technology and tactics. This knowledge would be invaluable for future encounters. Engineers repaired hull breaches and restored life support systems damaged during the ambush. Communication teams reached out across space to transmit reports, ensuring that allied species were aware of the battle's outcome and the human crew's survival. Even amid exhaustion, the crew demonstrated efficiency, focus, and the same calm precision that had allowed them to overcome the ambush. Their actions reinforced the central truth that humans were not only capable of surviving extreme danger, they thrived under it. Beyond the immediate repairs and assessments, the psychological aftermath was significant. The crew had faced death, chaos, and overwhelming odds, yet they emerged stronger, more cohesive, and more confident. Each member understood the value of trust, coordination, and bravery. They had witnessed firsthand that fear did not define humans. It was a tool, something that could sharpen focus and inspire innovative solutions. The bond between crew members had been strengthened through shared adversity. Pilots, engineers, gunners, and analysts had relied on each other completely, creating an unbreakable trust that could carry them through even greater challenges. This unity, forged in the heat of battle, would become a defining feature of the Resolute and a hallmark of human capability in the galaxy. The Shathrine Dominion, humiliated by their defeat, was forced to reconsider its strategy. Their pride had been wounded, their fleet weakened, and their assumptions about humans completely shattered. No longer could they dismiss humans as reckless or insignificant. The Dominion's leaders initiated emergency communications, calling for retreats, regrouping damaged vessels, and reassessing their position in the galaxy. What had been intended as a display of power had instead become a lesson in humility. Humans had proven that they were adaptable, intelligent, and relentless. Their ingenuity and courage under fire had transformed an ambush meant to intimidate into a decisive victory that would be remembered across star systems. In strategic and diplomatic terms, humanity had earned a new level of respect and perhaps even caution from every species that had witnessed the confrontation. Meanwhile, other species across the galaxy reacted in different ways. Some, who had once underestimated humans, began to approach them with renewed respect. They understood that provoking humans could have catastrophic consequences. Traders, diplomats, and explorers recalculated their plans, ensuring that human interests were acknowledged and their capabilities considered. Allies who had once been hesitant now recognized the value of aligning with humans. Some species that had observed the battle from a distance began quietly reaching out with offers of cooperation, trade, and mutual protection. The ambush intended to intimidate humans had instead reshaped interstellar politics, demonstrating that survival, strategy, and courage could shift the balance of influence in profound ways. Captain Raylan and his crew, aware of the broader implications, remained pragmatic. They understood that their actions would ripple through the galaxy, influencing perceptions, alliances, and potential threats for years to come. Raylan emphasized to his crew that while their victory was significant, it was also a responsibility. The galaxy now expected humans to be capable, intelligent, and assertive, but also fair and strategic. They had demonstrated power, yes, but with power came accountability. The crew's focus shifted from immediate survival to broader strategy, maintaining the ship, reporting accurate information to human command, and preparing for future encounters that might test them in new ways. The lessons of the ambush would not be forgotten, nor would the strategies, innovations, and bonds formed in the heat of battle. Humanity's reputation had grown, but Raylan also recognized that fear and respect were double-edged swords. While many species would now hesitate before attacking, there were still those who might attempt confrontation out of pride, vengeance, or ambition. The victory of the Resolute served as both a warning and a statement. Humans were capable of remarkable ingenuity and courage under pressure, and underestimating them was a fatal mistake. Yet, humans also sought to explore, learn, and build alliances wherever possible. Their goal was not conquest, but survival and understanding. This delicate balance between power and diplomacy would define humanity's role in the galaxy moving forward. The battle was over, but its consequences would unfold for years, shaping relationships, alliances, and strategies across countless star systems. The crew, having endured extreme physical and emotional strain, now experienced a sense of calm satisfaction. They had survived a situation that had seemed almost impossible. They had adapted, coordinated, and executed strategies under pressure, turning a dire ambush into a controlled victory. Each member of the crew had contributed uniquely. Engineers kept systems running, pilots executed daring maneuvers, gunners struck precise targets, and analysts provided critical data. Together, they had demonstrated the full spectrum of human capability, intelligence, courage, adaptability, and the unbreakable drive to survive. Their actions would be remembered not only as a tactical victory but as a testament to what humans could achieve when united, focused, and determined. It was a moment of pride, reflection, and quiet triumph. As the Resolute charted a course back toward human space, the crew took stock of the battle's lessons. Systems had been tested to their limits, strategies had been proven under fire, and trust between crew members had been reinforced. The galaxy, having observed the outcome, now understood that humans were not only resilient but formidable. News of the encounter would spread, both as a cautionary tale and as a testament to human ingenuity. Humans had survived against overwhelming odds, adapted to chaos, and turned danger into advantage. This experience would serve as a foundation for future missions, shaping training, tactics, and the understanding of what it meant to represent humanity in the galaxy. The crew's actions had not only saved themselves, they had elevated humanity's standing across the stars. Returning to human space, Raylan and his crew were met with both relief and respect. Human command recognized the significance of their actions, not just in terms of survival but in demonstrating the effectiveness of human training, strategy, and unity. The victory over the Shathreen Dominion became a case study in preparation, coordination, and adaptive thinking. It also reinforced the importance of trust, discipline, and leadership under extreme conditions. The crew had proven that humans could survive the unthinkable and thrive in the face of danger. Their story would inspire future generations, reminding humanity and the galaxy alike that courage, intelligence, and adaptability could overcome even the most overwhelming challenges. The Shathreen Dominion, humiliated and weakened, retreated to reconsider their position. Their failure served as a stark reminder that arrogance and underestimation could have devastating consequences. Across the galaxy, the event became legendary. It was no longer just a story of survival, it was a lesson in respect, fear, and the unpredictable power of humans. Civilizations that once ignored warnings now approached human ships with caution, knowing that even a single human vessel could alter the course of events. Humanity had not sought conflict, but when confronted, they had demonstrated that they were a force to be reckoned with, capable of shaping outcomes far beyond expectation. In the quiet that followed, the Resolute's crew reflected on what had transpired. They had faced death, overcome impossible odds, and proven that humans could thrive under extreme pressure. Every member of the crew understood that their victory was a combination of skill, courage, intelligence, and unity. They had acted as one organism, a team bound by trust, experience, and shared purpose. The galaxy had witnessed the moment when humanity, faced with annihilation, responded not with fear or surrender, but with ingenuity, bravery, and resolve. The lessons learned, bonds forged, and strategies executed during the ambush would carry forward, influencing not only future missions but the perception of humanity throughout the stars. Humans had survived, triumphed, and in doing so, had changed the galaxy's understanding of their power and potential.